Today, we are diving deep into one of the Bible's most fascinating and, let's be honest, confusing mysteries, the 144,000. But we're not just scratching the surface here. We're going to unpack a single, incredibly detailed interpretation that connects the dots between Solomon's temple, ancient prophecy, and what it describes as a final spiritual world war. It's the big question, isn't it? Who exactly are these 144,000 from the book of Revelation? I mean, is it a literal number, a symbolic group? Are they from a specific time in history? People have been debating this for centuries. But the source material we're digging into today, it presents a theory that is, frankly, startling. It pieces together dozens of clues from all over the Bible to build this single, cohesive story. It's a wild ride of prophecy, intense symbolism, and a final global spiritual showdown. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so the whole foundation of this argument starts by linking several key prophecies. It takes these verses from both the Old and New Testaments and says, hey, these aren't separate events. These are all describing the exact same moment in time. The first puzzle piece comes straight from Jesus. According to this text, when he talks about this mountain, he's specifically talking about Jerusalem. So this prophecy is pointing to a future time when a part of Jerusalem is literally forcibly picked up and thrown into the sea. Now, clue number 2 comes from the prophet Zechariah. He also talks about Jerusalem. He says half the city will be cut off and taken into captivity, and that the city will become a heavy stone for all the nations. You see the keywords popping up? Mountain, stone. So here's the crucial link. This interpretation says these aren't just unrelated metaphors. They're describing the very same event. A stone, made of people, is cut off from the mountain of Jerusalem and then cast into the sea of nations. It's one single dramatic act. Okay, so if a stone of people is cast into the sea of nations, what does any of that actually mean? Well, this is where the theory gets super specific with its definitions. First up, the sea. Now, you might be thinking of the ocean, right? But according to this view, nope. Drawing from Isaiah and Revelation, the sea is a symbol for the chaotic, churning mass of humanity, all the peoples, nations, and languages of the world that are in rebellion. And that brings us, of course, to the stone. This is the big connection. The theory says that heavy stone, the one cut from the mountain of Jerusalem, is none other than the 144,000. They are the group that gets sent into captivity among all the nations of the world. Now, if you thought that was deep, just wait. Because this is where the symbolism goes to a whole other level. To explain who these 144,000 are and what they do, the author points us to one of the most famous buildings in the entire Bible, Solomon's Temple. Check this out. The author draws this incredible direct parallel between the 144,000 and the 2 gigantic bronze pillars that stood at the entrance of the temple. The argument is that they are the 2 witnesses. Their character is hardened like bronze, they spiritually support the entire world just like the globe-shaped tops of the pillars, and they're sent to all the nations, which were symbolized by the 200 pomegranates carved onto those pillars. It's a 1-to-1 match. And this symbolism, it's not just some nice poetry. According to this text, it's actually a mathematical and strategic blueprint. It lays out a very, very specific global mission for these 144,000. Okay, so how do we get the number? The theory presents this pretty wild calculation based on the dimensions of those pillars. First, it calculates the total volume of both pillars as 72 units. Then, you multiply that number by the 200 pomegranates, the nations. That gives you 14,400. And finally, the source says each of those units represents a minyan, a Jewish prayer group of 10, which brings the grand total to a very, very familiar number. And there it is, 144,000 people. A number that this author argues isn't random at all, but is literally encoded into the architecture of Solomon's temple, destined to be sent out into the whole world. So what's their mission? It's basically a massive spiritual operation. They're taking captive, scattered across the globe into thousands of key cities. In each place, they act as the 2 witnesses, and their weapon is prayer. Their whole purpose is to spiritually attack and dismantle the final world empire, not with swords, but with their words. So we've got who they are, what they represent, and what they're supposed to do. But this interpretation adds one more layer, and this is probably the most shocking claim of the entire theory. So the source material asks this really pointed question. Given everything we've heard, their mission, their supernatural power,
are we really talking about a group of people who are 100% human?
And the answer, according to this interpretation, is no. It argues that the 144,000 are actually holy angels who come down to earth to be born as humans to Jewish women. This, the text says, is why they're called virgins, and why they can do supernatural things like call fire down from heaven. The author even connects it to when Jesus said he could call on 12 legions of angels, suggesting these are the very angels he was talking about. So human, angel, or somewhere in between, this group has a dramatic and very specific story. The text lays out their entire journey from their time on earth right through to their final reward. And this just lays out their whole story arc perfectly. Their ministry lasts for 3.5 years, and it ends when they are killed by the beast. But it doesn't end there. 3.5 days later, they are resurrected and ascend into heaven. After that, they come back with Christ to judge the nations and, finally, to rule with him for 1,000 years as priests and kings. So what's the ultimate point of all this? According to this interpretation of the parable of the sheep and the goats, the final judgment for everyone else on earth comes down to one simple thing. How did you treat these 144,000 when they were on their mission? It argues that helping them leads to eternal life. And ignoring them, well, that leads to condemnation. And that's really where this whole thing leaves us. It's a breathtakingly complex and interwoven theory, right? It connects prophecy, math, and architecture into one single epic story. Now, whether you buy into it or not, it's a powerful example of that deep human need to find patterns, to solve mysteries, and to uncover a grand narrative hidden within sacred texts. It kind of makes you wonder about how we all read and interpret things, and the amazing tapestries of meaning we can create from ancient words.